The message arrived at 6:42 p.m., right as I was setting our anniversary dinner on the table. 2 plates, 2 candles, a lemon chicken I had cooked from the recipe Emily once said tasted like home. My phone lit up beside the folded napkins, and there it was, casual as a weather update. Going on a vacation with Ryan. Do not be jealous. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, like maybe the words would become less insulting if I gave them enough patience. They did not. My name is Nathan Brooks, 38 years old, a project manager in Tampa, Florida, the kind of husband who pays the mortgage on time, remembers oil changes, fixes loose cabinet handles, and believes marriage should not feel like a courtroom where you have to defend basic respect. I stood in our kitchen under the soft yellow lights, hearing the air conditioner hum, smelling garlic and lemon, watching the candle flame tremble in a room that suddenly felt borrowed. Emily and I had been married for 7 years. 7 years of birthdays, hospital visits, delayed flights, grocery runs, family cookouts, quiet Sunday mornings, and the small, ordinary things that make a life feel real. And she had reduced all of that to one sentence with her ex-boyfriend's name sitting in the middle of it like a stain. Ryan Caldwell. Even seeing the name made my jaw tighten. Not because I was insecure. Not because I was the kind of man who thought a woman could never speak to someone from her past. I had trusted Emily for years. I trusted her when she said Ryan was ancient history. I trusted her when she said he only reached out once in a while to check in. I trusted her when she laughed and told me I was too steady to ever worry about a man like him. That was the dangerous part. Not the vacation. Not even Ryan. The dangerous part was that she knew exactly how disrespectful it sounded, and she sent it anyway. Do not be jealous. For words dressed like a joke. For words meant to make my pain look childish before I even had a chance to feel it. I looked at the table. The wine glasses waiting. The card I had written and sealed that morning before work. The small box beside her plate with the silver bracelet she had pointed out 3 months earlier and probably forgotten. I remembered standing in the mall jewelry store, feeling stupidly proud because I had noticed. That is what love does to a man. It makes him collect tiny details and turn them into proof that he was paying attention. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have asked why. I could have called. I could have typed something angry and given her exactly what she expected. The jealous husband. The insecure husband, the man she could roll her eyes about to Ryan at the airport. Instead, I turned the screen off. Silence settled over the kitchen, thick and strange. The chicken cooled. The candles kept burning. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's dog barked once, then stopped. I pulled out the chair across from hers and sat down. Not to eat, not to wait, to think. Because when someone tests your dignity, the first answer should never be panic. It should be clarity. And in that quiet kitchen, with our anniversary dinner untouched and my wife on her way to another man's version of freedom, I understood something I should have understood months earlier. Emily was not asking for permission. She was announcing a choice. So I made one too. The morning after the message, Nathan Brooks sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, watching the sunlight stretch across the countertop and thinking about the subtle cracks in his marriage that he had ignored for too long. Emily Brooks had left for the airport hours ago, Ryan Caldwell's name still lingering in his mind like a shadow he could not shake, and the quiet of the house felt heavier than usual. The anniversary dishes sat in the sink, cold and abandoned, a testament to the life Emily had taken lightly with a single text. Nathan opened his laptop and began to review their shared accounts, not out of suspicion but out of caution, tracing payments, hotel bookings, and travel arrangements, noting patterns that suggested the vacation was not as spontaneous as Emily had portrayed. He scribbled notes in his journal, listing dates, times, and the smallest details that could later form a clear record of decisions made without his consent. He called Margaret Ellis, his attorney, who had helped him manage legal matters in the past, and spoke in measured tones, explaining the situation without frustration or blame, requesting guidance on how to protect assets and maintain clarity in the marital agreement while the trip progressed. He spent the next few hours drafting precise instructions for account restrictions, keeping the language neutral and factual, avoiding emotion, because Nathan had learned that calm precision often carried more weight than any outburst. While he worked, he remembered early days with Emily, when laughter filled the apartment and small gestures of care had built trust, and realized that the gap between that intimacy and the current situation had widened slowly, almost imperceptibly, until a single text message exposed the fragility of what had been taken for granted. Outside, the morning traffic hummed softly, neighbors walked dogs, joggers passed by, and the city seemed indifferent to the quiet storm unfolding in the Brooks kitchen. Yet Nathan felt fully present in each moment, fully aware of every choice he was making. By mid-morning, he had organized the documentation, reviewed the accounts, and prepared a timeline of communications, ensuring that any steps he took could be verified and explained clearly if necessary. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at the street, imagining Emily boarding the plane, Ryan speaking casually beside her, both unaware that the apparent control lay entirely with him. He inhaled deeply, letting the sun warm his face, and felt a sense of focus and readiness that had been absent the night before. Nathan did not feel anger or panic. He felt determination and clarity. Every action was deliberate, every observation noted, and every record preserved, creating a quiet but unshakable foundation of authority that would allow him to respond to the unfolding situation with precision and dignity. As the clock ticked toward noon, he prepared a detailed outline of the day's priorities, balancing the need for practical steps with an awareness of the emotional stakes, knowing that the unfolding events required both patience and strategic thinking. And in the stillness of the house, Nathan realized that the most powerful moves often happened quietly, measured carefully, and executed with calm control rather than haste or impulse. By late afternoon, the truth stopped looking like a feeling and started looking like a spreadsheet. Nathan sat in his home office with the blinds half open, the Tampa sun cutting pale gold lines across the desk, and the bank statements arranged in front of him by date. He had expected a plane ticket, maybe a hotel deposit, something careless, something stupid, something a married woman could still try to explain as a misunderstanding. What he found was planning. Weeks of it. A resort charge in Key West from 3 Fridays earlier. 2 round-trip tickets booked under Emily's rewards account. A rental car reservation with an upgrade fee. A beachfront suite deposit marked non-refundable. Restaurant holds. Spa credits. Small expenses tucked between groceries, gas, and the electric bill, as if betrayal became less visible when hidden among normal life. He stared at the screen for a long time, not because he did not understand the numbers, because he understood them too clearly. Emily had not sent that text in a moment of impulse. She had built the trip piece by piece while eating dinner across from him, while asking him to pick up almond milk, while letting him kiss her forehead before work. That was the part that hollowed him. Not Ryan. Not the vacation. The quiet preparation. Nathan printed the statements one by one, the machine humming beside him like a tired witness. Each page slid out warm, clean, undeniable. He placed them into a folder and wrote only one word on the tab, timeline. Then his phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Emily had posted a photo from the airport lounge. No kiss. No open scandal. Nothing dramatic enough for the world to condemn. Just 2 carry-on bags, 2 glasses of sparkling water, and Ryan's hand visible at the edge of the frame, resting too comfortably near hers. The caption said, "Closure looks better at 30,000 feet. Nathan read it once. His face did not change. Then he saw the comments. Her friend Megan had written, "Finally doing something for you." Another wrote, "If he is secure, he will understand." Ryan commented with a small airplane emoji and the words, "Some chapters deserve a better ending." Nathan leaned back in his chair. There it was. Public enough to humiliate him, vague enough to deny later. A performance designed with exits. Emily had always been good at that. She could cut you with implication and then act surprised when you bled. He took screenshots, saved them into the same folder, and forwarded everything to Margaret Ellis. Her reply came 11 minutes later. Preserve all records. Do not engage emotionally. We can protect the accounts tonight. Nathan looked at those words until his breathing slowed. Do not engage emotionally. It sounded simple. It was not. His thumb wanted to type. His chest wanted answers. His pride wanted to force someone, anyone, to admit what this was. But a man has to decide whether he wants noise or results. So Nathan chose results. He called the bank, verified his identity, and asked for the legal steps required to limit unauthorized use of joint credit lines while leaving ordinary household obligations untouched. He was careful, specific, Calm. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, all protected. Resort upgrades, luxury holds, additional travel expenses, not funded by him. The representative asked if he wanted to file a dispute. Nathan looked at the anniversary card still sitting unopened on the corner of his desk. No, he said. I want a boundary. When the call ended, the house felt different. Not warmer, not easier, but steadier. He walked back to the kitchen and finally cleared the anniversary dinner from the night before. The chicken went into the trash. The candles into a drawer. The bracelet box stayed on the table for a moment before he picked it up and placed it in his office safe beside the printed statements. Not as a gift anymore, as evidence of the man he had been before one sentence changed the room. That night, Emily sent no message. Ryan posted a sunset from the airplane window. Nathan did not look twice. He already had what he needed. The vacation had taken off. So had his old patience. The first time Emily cried over Ryan Caldwell, she was 28 years old and sitting on the floor of Nathan's apartment with mascara under her eyes and a suitcase by the door. Nathan remembered that night because it was raining hard enough to blur the Tampa streetlights into gold streaks on the windows. She had called him at 11:17, voice shaking, asking if she could come over for a little while. A little while became 3 weeks. 3 weeks became a lease with both their names on it. Back then, Ryan was not an exciting chapter or a harmless piece of her past. He was the man who disappeared when her life became inconvenient. He had left her with unpaid bills, broken promises, and a confidence so damaged she apologized before asking for anything. Nathan did not fix her like some hero in a movie. Real life does not work that cleanly. He simply stayed. He sat with her at the credit union while she made payment arrangements. He helped her sell furniture she no longer needed. He cooked eggs at midnight when she forgot to eat. He listened when she spoke and stayed quiet when silence was kinder. Slowly, Emily came back to herself. She laughed again. She slept through the night. She stopped checking her phone every 10 minutes for a man who had already shown her who he was. Nathan remembered the first time she said he made her feel safe. They were walking through a farmer's market on a Saturday morning, the Florida heat already rising off the pavement, her hand tucked into his, a paper bag of oranges swinging between them. She looked at him and said, I did not know Steady could feel this good. He believed her. That was the problem. A man can survive many things, but believing someone meant what they said will ruin him in ways he does not notice until years later. Their wedding was small, less than 50 people, white chairs on a patch of grass near the water, Emily smiling through tears as she promised that the past was finished. Ryan's name did not come up that day. Not once. Nathan thought that meant something. For years, it did. They built a life that was not flashy but held together. A house with hurricane shutters, 2 aging cars, a grill on the back patio, a shared calendar full of dentist appointments and family birthdays. Emily used to tease him for labeling storage bins and setting reminders for property taxes. Then, somewhere around year 5, the teasing changed texture. Stable became predictable. Careful became boring. Responsible became controlling if he asked too many questions. Nathan missed the first warning signs because they came wrapped in ordinary complaints. She wanted more adventure, more spontaneity, more spark. He tried. Weekend trips to St. Augustine, concert tickets, new restaurants near the bay, but adventure was not what she wanted. She wanted to feel chosen by the kind of chaos she had once asked him to rescue her from. Ryan came back through a birthday message, then a coffee, then a conversation about closure. Emily described it like emotional maturity, like Nathan should applaud her for being evolved enough to revisit old wounds. He did not argue. He trusted the woman he married more than the man who had hurt her before. Looking back, that trust felt almost innocent. By the time Ryan's name became normal again, Emily had already started rewriting history. Nathan was no longer the man who helped her rebuild. He was the man who made her life too quiet. Ryan was no longer the man who left. He was the one who understood the part of her Nathan supposedly could not reach. That night, after filing the bank statements and screenshots, Nathan sat alone in the dark living room and finally saw the pattern. Emily was not chasing Ryan because he had changed. She was chasing the version of herself that did not have to be accountable. And Nathan, the steady husband, had become the mirror she no longer wanted to face. Nathan spent the morning preparing quietly, not rushing, not panicking, but methodically securing every detail he could control. The living room was still, sunlight spilling across the carpet, highlighting the stacks of bank statements, screenshots, and printouts he had organized the night before. He dialed Margaret Ellis, his attorney, and went through the list again. Joint accounts, credit cards, recurring household expenses, vacation payments, reservations, and any transactions that could be linked to Emily's trip. Margaret instructed him on legal steps to place temporary limits on non-essential charges while preserving necessary household spending. Nathan followed each instruction with precision, taking notes, marking each document, and making sure all timestamps were preserved. He created a clear timeline of communications, texts, emails, social media posts, and any interactions that could demonstrate planning rather than spontaneity. While he worked, he remembered earlier years with Emily, when small gestures mattered and trust was unshakable. The contrast between those days and now struck him sharply. Emily was now relying on old familiarity and assumptions to push boundaries, testing him in ways she probably believed were harmless or amusing. Nathan did not react emotionally. He did not call her. He did not confront Ryan or send a warning message. Instead, he quietly established control over the elements that mattered. He logged into the shared accounts, verified the transactions, and placed holds on non-essential expenditures, making sure nothing could be spent without oversight. The anniversary card, the untouched bracelet, and the anniversary dinner remained on the counter, silent witnesses to what had changed. Nathan moved to the window and looked out at the street, imagining Emily and Ryan somewhere miles away, thinking they were in charge, unaware that their assumptions were carefully monitored and constrained. He allowed himself a brief pause to breathe, appreciating the calm clarity of knowing every action he had taken was deliberate and protected his dignity. He made a final note for Margaret, detailing what had been completed and outlining steps for any further necessary adjustments while Emily was away. By late morning, Nathan had created a framework that ensured both legal and financial safety, while leaving room for measured decisions upon her return. He made himself a second cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and let the house quiet settle around him, the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside providing a rhythm for reflection. In that stillness, he realized that the power of calm, careful preparation outweighed any impulsive confrontation, and that responding with thought rather than reaction would define the next chapter of their relationship. Every detail, every precaution, every observation had been cataloged and secured, creating a quiet authority that Emily could not disrupt and Ryan could not influence. Nathan understood fully now that patience, precision, and clarity were stronger than anger, and that the choices he made today would set the tone for the rest of their story together or apart. Nathan spent the afternoon organizing the final preparations for controlling the situation while Emily and Ryan were miles away. The home felt quiet and purposeful, sunlight spilling through the blinds and stripes across the living room floor where he had laid out every document, email screenshot, and financial statement in precise order. He reviewed the joint accounts again, confirming the temporary holds were active and noting which transactions required his approval, ensuring that every charge connected to Emily's trip could not proceed without oversight. Margaret Ellis called to verify that every step had been properly documented and legally sound, and Nathan followed her instructions with meticulous attention, marking each file and checking every timestamp. He paused to reflect on the irony. The same meticulous attention to detail that had built his stable life with Emily now provided him with leverage while she was unaware. Outside, the sun glinted off the windows of neighboring houses, and a soft breeze moved the blinds, stirring the papers slightly. Nathan checked the timeline he had created, lining up the sequence of Emily's texts, social media posts, and bank transactions to demonstrate planning rather than spontaneity. Each entry was recorded, each observation noted, a clear record of choice and consequence. He thought about the early days of their marriage, the laughter, the shared errands, the quiet evenings in front of the television, and the small moments that had cemented trust. Those memories contrasted sharply with the present, where Emily's decisions had disregarded his trust, assuming his calm would be interpreted as weakness or indifference. Nathan prepared a short summary for Margaret, outlining the limits he had set, the steps completed, and contingencies for any further unauthorized expenses, ensuring the legal framework was airtight. He walked slowly to the kitchen and poured another cup of coffee, observing the quiet house. The anniversary card still resting unopened on the counter, and the bracelet he had purchased months earlier, untouched. These objects, once symbols of connection, now functioned as silent witnesses to the boundaries he was enforcing. He allowed himself a measured moment to breathe and focus, reinforcing in his mind that every action he had taken was deliberate and controlled. There was no rush, no panic, no emotional reaction, only the steady accumulation of clarity, authority, and preparation that would allow him to respond when the situation required. Nathan realized that true power in moments like this was not in confrontation or anger, but in deliberate, calculated measures taken quietly, ensuring that when Emily returned, the reality of her choices would be undeniable, documented, and managed without a single word of accusation. By late afternoon, the house was organized, the documents secured, and Nathan sat back in his chair with the satisfaction that he had created an environment where he maintained control calmly, his dignity intact, and his decisions ready to guide the unfolding consequences of a situation he had managed with patience, foresight, and precision. Nathan arrived at the bank in the late morning, a calm presence in a lobby full of muted chatter and fluorescent lights, briefcase in hand, prepared to confirm that all holds and limits he had placed on joint accounts were secure and legally documented. He spoke with the account manager, providing identification and a detailed explanation of the temporary restrictions, while Margaret Ellis, on speakerphone, guided him through each step to ensure compliance and protect assets. Every transaction linked to Emily's trip was carefully cataloged, each with supporting screenshots and emails, demonstrating that he was taking reasoned, measured steps rather than reacting emotionally. After completing the banking tasks, Nathan returned home and reviewed the timeline he had constructed over the past days, aligning messages, social media posts, receipts, and notes about Emily's interactions with Ryan Caldwell, creating a comprehensive record of choice and intention. He moved through the house deliberately, checking that all printed statements and supporting documentation were organized in folders labeled clearly with dates, purposes, and levels of urgency, making certain that nothing could be misplaced or overlooked. Nathan paused by the window and looked out at the street, the suburban neighborhood quiet and sunlit, and imagined Emily and Ryan en route to their destination, confident and unmonitored, unaware that the framework he had established ensured he retained oversight. He sat back in his office chair and allowed himself to breathe, recognizing that every detail he had captured, every hold he had placed, and every step he had taken would give him control over the situation without a single confrontation. Nathan reflected briefly on the early years of their marriage, remembering how small gestures of attention, patience, and consistency had built trust and intimacy, and contrasted that with the present moment, where deliberate action and strategic preparation had become necessary to maintain dignity and security. He reviewed the anniversary card and the bracelet on his desk, objects that once symbolized connection, now neutral items that marked boundaries. The phone remained silent, no messages from Emily. Nathan smiled faintly, not out of triumph, but from the clarity that came from methodical preparation and restraint. He stood and walked to the kitchen to pour a cup of coffee, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic, letting the quiet reinforce his focus. Every decision, every step had been considered, ensuring that he could act decisively when necessary while maintaining calm control. By mid-afternoon, he had reviewed the legal documents, verified that all protections were active, and ensured that Margaret Ellis had all necessary evidence to support any further action. The house was organized, the documents secured, and Nathan sat quietly, the sunlight moving across the floor, understanding that the power of measured, silent action often outweighed the loudest protests. He had created a stable environment in which Emily's choices could be observed, documented, and managed with precision, guaranteeing that when the consequences of her actions became apparent, they would unfold according to the structure he had carefully prepared over the past days, all without raising his voice or losing composure. The first sign came at 4:16 p.m., not from Emily, but from the bank. Nathan's phone buzzed on the kitchen table while he was reviewing the final folder Margaret Ellis had asked him to prepare. Transaction declined. Ocean View Resort, Key West. $786.42. He stared at the notification for one quiet second, then placed the phone beside the printed statements. No smile. No victory lap. Just confirmation. A few minutes later, another alert arrived. Transaction declined. Coastal Lux Rentals. $419. Then a third. Transaction declined. Coral Bay Dining Group. $268. Each notification landed with the same clean sound, small taps against the glass screen. But Nathan could almost hear the distance between them and the resort lobby where Emily was probably standing with her sunglasses pushed into her hair, her voice lowered, her patience thinning. At 4:31, she called. He let it ring. At 4:32, she called again. He answered on the fourth ring and said nothing. Emily's voice came through bright at first, too bright, the tone she used when she wanted a problem to become someone else's responsibility. Nathan, something is wrong with the card. He looked at the folder labeled Timeline. What card? Our card, she said, sharp now. The one we use for travel. The hotel says the upgrade is not going through, and Ryan already gave them his card for the deposit, but he says this is ridiculous because you know we use that account for trips. Nathan leaned back in the chair. We use that account for our trips. Silence. Not long, but enough. Emily exhaled. Do not do this. Do not make this some petty punishment. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the refrigerator hum, the ceiling fan turn, the ordinary sounds of a house that had once felt like a shared promise. I am not punishing you, Emily. I protected the household expenses. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, groceries. Everything else requires review. Her voice dropped. You embarrassed me. That was the sentence that told him everything. Not you hurt me. Not I crossed a line. Not I should have talked to you. You embarrassed me. Somewhere behind her, Nathan heard Ryan say something muffled, impatient, too far from the phone but close enough to matter. Emily covered the speaker for half a second. Then she came back colder. Ryan thinks you are being controlling. Nathan almost laughed, but the sound never left his chest. Of course he does. Men who spend another man's money often discover principles when the receipt arrives. She went silent again. This time longer. He could picture it clearly. The polished lobby. The marble counter. The resort employee pretending not to listen. Ryan shifting his weight, calculating the cost of being charming without Nathan's credit line underneath him. Emily whispered, Nathan, just approve it. We can talk when I get back. He looked at the anniversary card still unopened on the desk. No, he said. One word. Calm. Final. The line stayed open. He heard her breathing change. Ryan's voice rose in the background, not shouting, just annoyed enough to reveal himself. He said something about not paying for a suite he did not choose, something about Emily handling her own situation, something about this whole thing being more complicated than she made it sound. There it was. The mask slipping. Not all at once. Just enough. Emily tried to recover. Nathan, please. This is humiliating. He opened the folder and looked at the airport post, the caption, the comments, the weeks of charges dressed up as grocery noise. Humiliation, he said softly, is not a declined card. Humiliation is setting an anniversary dinner for someone who is already packing for another man's vacation. She did not answer. For the first time since the text, Emily had no clever line. No joke. No, do not be jealous. No polished explanation about closure. Only silence from a resort lobby 300 miles away and the quiet collapse of a fantasy that had looked romantic only while someone else was paying for it. Nathan ended the call before she could turn regret into negotiation. Then he forwarded the alerts to Margaret, added the call time to the timeline, and placed his phone face down. Outside, the Florida evening had turned gold, sunlight laying itself across the kitchen floor like something peaceful. The trip was not over, but the illusion was. Emily came home 2 days early with her suitcase rolling behind her like a confession. It was 9:18 on a Sunday morning, humid and bright. The kind of Florida morning where sprinklers clicked across lawns and neighbors washed salt from their cars after a weekend near the coast. Nathan was at the kitchen table with coffee, the same table where the anniversary dinner had gone cold. But this time there were no candles, no unopened card, no bracelet box waiting to be misunderstood as forgiveness. There was only a folder from Margaret Ellis, a printed timeline, and a calm so complete it made the room feel larger. Emily stepped inside slowly. She looked tired, not ruined, not dramatic, just smaller than the woman who had sent that message like a dare. Her hair was pulled back, her sunglasses resting on top of her head, her voice careful when she said his name. Nathan. He did not stand. Not because he wanted power over her, but because he was done performing pain for someone who had already made it entertainment. She left the suitcase near the door and said the trip was a mistake. Ryan was not who she thought he was. Things got awkward after the card issue. He made everything about money. Nathan looked at her then, really looked. 7 years of marriage can teach a man the difference between regret and inconvenience. Emily was not grieving the line she crossed. She was grieving the moment the line stopped paying for her. She sat across from him, eyes moving to the folder. What is that? He slid it toward her. Bank statements. Screenshots. The airport post. The resort charges. The call log. The household protections. And a draft separation agreement Margaret prepared in case you came home still believing this was about jealousy. Emily opened the folder, then closed it almost immediately, as if paper could burn without flame. Her mouth trembled. Nathan, I never meant to humiliate you. He nodded once. I believe you meant to make me prove I would tolerate it. That is different. The words landed quietly. She tried to explain closure, confusion, old feelings, how Ryan made her remember who she used to be. Nathan listened because listening had always been his strength, but this time, it was not an invitation back in. When she finished, he said, jealousy did not damage this marriage. Disrespect did. I trusted you with freedom, and you used it to test whether I had any self-respect left. Emily wiped at her cheek and whispered that she still loved him. Maybe she did, in the way some people love a house after they leave the door open during a storm. Nathan stood then, picked up his coffee mug, and carried it to the sink. The simple act felt final. Not loud, not cruel. Final. Over the next few weeks, the separation moved forward without public scenes. Ryan disappeared first, as men like that often do when fantasy turns into invoices. Emily removed the airport post. Her friends stopped commenting. The house became quiet again, but this time the quiet did not feel abandoned. It felt clean. Nathan kept working, kept paying the mortgage, kept walking the same neighborhood at dusk when the palms bent slightly in the Gulf breeze. Some nights, memory still found him. The farmer's market, the wedding vows, the first time Emily called Steady beautiful. But memory is not a reason to return to a place that taught you to disappear. So if you were Nathan, what would you have done when that message appeared on your anniversary night? Would you have argued right away? Or would you have let the truth reveal itself through choices and consequences? And if stories like this remind you that calm is not weakness, stay with this channel, because some betrayals do not end with shouting. They end with one quiet boundary, one documented truth, and one person finally choosing himself.